Hey guys, this is Kenna Stubblefield, and I am presenting on the learner's experience an account from an ELL on her experience learning English. So throughout the course of this presentation, we will discuss three main topics. The first section is the learner portfolio, so we'll answer the question, who is the ELL that was interviewed, and we will talk about the history of this person and stuff like that. The second section of this presentation is speech community. We will be discussing what is a speech community and why is it important, and what was the experience of this specific ELL in speech communities. Then the third portion of this presentation, we will discuss language identity. We will answer the question, what is language identity, what affects it, and what was the identity of the ELL that was interviewed. So let's dive right in. First, we have the learner portfolio. So the learner that I interviewed for this project was a lady named Spacey. She's fluent in 3 languages, her first 2 being Kinyarwanda, French, and English. She moved here from Rwanda in 2009 at the age of 29. And at that time, she was fluent in both Kinyarwanda and French. And she learned English when she moved here in 2009. And she said that her largest time of learning English was from 2009 to 2012, before she really felt comfortable and confident in speaking English. She learned English in a pretty interesting way. She was not able to go out of her home when she first came to the United States for personal reasons, but she watched a lot of cartoons on TV. She listened to nursery rhymes, and she listened to children's songs. So she told me that Dora the Explorer was her English teacher, so I included a picture of Dora the Explorer, which I thought was kind of funny because Dora the Explorer also speaks some Spanish, so for her to learn English from her is kind of interesting to me, but that's how she learned English. She is still learning English today. She uses simple English and misses some phrases. She said that when she did go out after trying to learn English from cartoons and songs and children's rhymes and things like that, she was shocked with how different the tone of voice was in these cartoons and rhymes and songs compared to the tone and the speed of speech outside of those things that she listened to. So that was interesting. Her main language is Kinyarwanda, and she is a mother to 4 girls, and this was also an interesting aspect of her life. Her daughters do not speak Kinyarwanda. They understand everything that is said because she speaks it often. Her and her husband only speak to each other in Kinyarwanda. They understand it, but when they answer back to their mother or father, they will answer in English. So I thought that was a pretty cool dynamic they have. So now we will talk about speech community. So what is a speech community? So first we have a community of practice. And a community of practice is a group of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. And so individuals in communities of practice are often engaged in a process of collective learning in a common domain. So there's 3 characteristics of a community of practice: domain, community, and practice. Within a speech community of practice, individuals are interacting with one another using specialized speech in a specific domain. So the domain of a speech community would be speech. The characteristics of domain means that membership in the speech community requires a certain level of commitment, as well as a certain level of competence within the specific domain and with the language of the domain. Individuals must identify as part of the community in order to exist within the community, and that creates the community aspect of community of practice. And to form a community, the individual must make a commitment to learning and interacting with one another. The practice component of a speech community is fulfilled when interactions and learning that take place among the individuals provide opportunities for the language to be utilized throughout the community so that knowledge of the domain is continually being disseminated into the community and being used. Speech communities have an important impact on second language acquisition, and this is where Vygotsky's sociocultural theory comes in. This theory elaborates that learning is a collaborative activity that takes place with other members of a language. Language development occurs as a result of meaningful interaction, and therefore second language acquisition relies on social interactions that the learner will have with other speakers of the target language. And a community of practice is one language learning environment in which this connectivity and collaboration and social interaction will take place with other speakers. And so speech communities play a large role in second language acquisition. So let's look at Spacey's speech community. So in the experience of Spacey, she's involved in 3 speech communities. Her first community of speech is her native language, Kinyarwanda. She uses this at home, at church, in certain social situations. Like I said before, her and her husband exclusively speak to each other in this language. She attends a church service with all Rwandan individuals, so they speak this language during that service and communicating with other members of that service. And the group of individuals that attend that service also participate in other activities together where she would use the language as well. She's also involved in an English speech community. She uses this while doing her job. She also attends a church where English is spoken, so she kind of does both. And she uses this in most social situations, so like appointments, the grocery store, things like that. She uses English particularly whenever she's doing her job. That's the most often that she uses her English. And her third speech community is French, and although she doesn't use this language very much now, she was involved in a French speech community when she lived in Rwanda. She didn't really elaborate on French. She just threw that into the interview at one point. And so I don't know the extent to the speech community that she was involved in Rwanda, but I know that she was fluent in it, and so therefore she had some sort of interaction. And Spacey's been included in the speech community since she began learning English, and like I said before, she wasn't allowed to leave the house very much when she first came to the United States, but she did attend church once a week where she socialized with English speakers, and that's where she actually felt that she wanted to learn English because she is a very social person, and she wanted to talk to these people at church, but she was not able to. And so that's when she decided that she needed to learn English. And although she was involved in that speech community during that time, her socialization in the L2 was limited since it was only once a week. So that may have hindered her language acquisition. So now we have a language identity. And what is language identity? It is how one perceives himself as an individual and community member based on differences and similarities. So for language identity, the difference or similarity upon which the individual perceives himself is a language that they speak. And a person can have multiple language identities that they switch to at certain times to suit the identity they want to be recognized as having. And this idea relates to Krashen's 5-input hypothesis of the affective filter. Krashen argued that people acquire second languages only if they receive comprehensible input and if they have a low enough effective filter to allow the input in. And this includes effects such as motivation, attitude, anxiety, and self-confidence. And so if motivation and self-confidence are low and anxiety is high, then learners will have a negative attitude and block L2 input. And each of these affects a person's identity or how they perceive themselves. So Spacey believes that she is somewhat fluent in English, but she still has a lot to learn. Therefore, her self-confidence in speaking English is lower than her confidence in speaking Kinyarwanda. And she first decided to learn English because she felt that she needed it to communicate with people around her. So although she doesn't have a negative attitude toward the language now, she might have at the beginning because it was something that she felt she needed to do rather than being internally motivated. She was extrinsically motivated. And so just each of these filters may have affected her language acquisition. So like I said, she has 2 specific language identities at varying levels of proficiency. Her Kinyarwanda identity seems to overpower her English identity. She feels more closely tied to Kinyarwanda than English. She speaks English because she has to, but she prefers to speak Kinyarwanda. Her thoughts are all in Kinyarwanda. Her personal life is in Kinyarwanda. Her family speaks it. When she thinks very personally or speaks very personally, like in her prayers, she uses Kinyarwanda. And so she feels very connected with her culture, and she does not want to lose that aspect of herself. She also has family that still live in Rwanda, and so she communicates with them in this language. Like I said, she usually uses English because she has to. She told me that she feels like she's fluent in English, but she still has a lot of learning to do. She can't think of certain words whenever she's wanting to say something, and so her confidence in English is a little bit lower, which is may affect why Kinyarwanda is her main identity. And although she has 2 language identities, she doesn't really switch between the languages to suit the identity she wishes to be perceived as. She switches between these languages in order to effectively communicate with those around her. She doesn't feel very tied to English as she feels with Kinyarwanda. So in summary, we can conclude that Spacey's learning experience has definitely been impacted by speech communities and her language identity. She more strongly identifies herself with Kinyarwanda than English, which may have been impacted by her exposure and acceptance in a speech community, and her affective filter may have impacted her identity, and she also may have been impacted by learning at an older age. Thank you for listening.